Hello again. This is Dr. Brad Holt with the seventh of our short segments about Christian spirituality based on my book, Thirsty for God. We're talking about the ancient times of Christianity now, the first 6 centuries. And right around the year 300, we have the beginnings of Christian monasticism. The monks and the nuns of early Christianity were people who took Christian spirituality very seriously. And in this case, they took it seriously by going out into the wilderness and living as hermits. The most famous of these early monks was Antony of Egypt. As you see, he lived about 100 years. He was so healthy. We know about Antony because of a book written by a famous theologian named Athanasius of Alexandria. He had met Antony and admired him, and so wrote a book that became a bestseller in ancient times. That is, each copy had to be copied by hand, of course. Antony, as a young man at the age of 20, heard the gospel reading, "Go and sell what you have and give it to the poor." He immediately decided to obey this word from Jesus, very much unlike us affluent Christians in the West. But he not only sought to obey it, but he sought to help his family. That is, he was an orphan. His parents had died, and he had a considerable inheritance. But he also had a sister, and he saw to her welfare first before he went on the rigorous trail of giving away everything. There's a kind of freedom, I suppose, for Antony, and later for Francis of Assisi, in giving up all their possessions. Antony fell in with other Christian ascetics who were living near his town, and he learned the practices of fasting and praying long. And eventually, he became so bold in his faith in Jesus Christ that he went to show his disdain for death. Now back up a moment here and notice that for many of us, the main enemy of our lives is sin. Catholics and Lutherans particularly have this tendency to regard this as our main problem. But for Easterners, those in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, the characteristic foe of humanity is death. Antony went out to the burial ground and lived among the tombs to show that he was not afraid of death. He was also confronting another opponent of humanity, namely the demons. Now some of you may say, I don't believe in demons, but when you look inside, maybe you find that you have your own demons. In that sense, we're all fighting demons, and for Antony, these were demons who lived in the desert. You remember that when Jesus went out into the desert, he was tempted by the devil for 40 days. The belief at that time was that the evil spirits were out there in the wilderness somewhere. Antony is like a soldier who attempts to address the enemy on his own ground. The demons didn't like Antony showing his disdain for death, and they came and beat him up. He was left seemingly dead himself. But his friends found him, and they brought him into the town and laid him out for the wake. And as he lay there, he woke up. And in the middle of the night, when all of his friends were weeping and wailing and then falling asleep, he quietly got up and went back out to the tombs and continued his program. As time passed, Antony wore off some of his youthful zeal and became wise in the ways of the Spirit. And as he moved further and further into the desert, others heard about him, and he became a spiritual director. He became the wise man whom we've read about in so many cartoons. Father, give me a word. He was one of those desert monks who helped people, who prayed for them, who reconciled them, healed them, helped to solve their problems. And so he lived all alone until he was 105 years old. Now his example was followed by many others, both men and women. And the sayings of these people who lived in the desert, the fathers and mothers are still being published today because they give such an interesting, different kind of light about Christian spirituality. They shine a light about what it might mean to be devoted entirely to God and Jesus. One of my favorite stories about these desert fathers is that one man, coming back to his cell, that is, his little hut where he lived, which was called a cell, he found that there was another man there taking away all his goods and loading them on a donkey. There were no police around, of course. When the desert father came upon the thief, he simply said, "Oh, sir, you've forgotten a few things over here. I'll help you load them on your donkey." So after doing that, the thief walked off with all that he had. And by doing that, he showed that he wasn't dependent upon his possessions. The desert mothers, too, have their sayings, and Mother Syncletica, one of them, said that it's very important for Christian people to shine with the Spirit. Someone came to her and said, "Oh, I've been trudging along with my Christian life all this time, and what am I doing wrong?" And the desert mother said, "Why don't you shine with fire? Let the Holy Spirit release you to something really extravagant." I encourage you to find the sayings of the desert fathers and mothers. One edition is edited by Benedicta Ward, you will find. And go further than I've introduced you here. As a spiritual practice related to this session, I suggest that you go on a retreat. Either go all by yourself informally out to a place that is quiet and wild, or join others at a monastery or retreat center so that you have time to ponder as the monks and nuns of Egypt did. See you next time.